Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! This game is over! Pack it up, boys, we're going home!
Welcome to week 2 of the NFL season. Lions have another rematch of the playoffs against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm really happy to welcome in Eric Woodyard. Does a great job with ESPN covering the Detroit Lions. Eric, before we start, though, I have to give a shout out to my son, Connor Twentyman. Turned 17 this week. Your son, Ethan, you bring him around. He comes around during training camp and stuff. How old is Ethan? 10. Now, I was a travel hockey dad, travel baseball dad. He's pretty good basketball player, isn't
travel
he?
Basketball. He just started football, so shout out to Connor, though. Happy birthday. But my son, man, he doing all type of stuff, man. Every day I feel like I'm ripping and running. This morning, same thing. I took him to school. He had practice last night, practice today, so it's
10. That's a fun age, man. That's when they're starting to kind of get into their own, right?
Yeah, it is.
All right, well, let's get into this matchup because it's a good one. And look, Eric, you had a great statistic about just how difficult this Lions schedule was to start. Obviously, you had the week 1 rematch of the wild card playoffs with the Rams, get an overtime win there. Now you run it right back. You get a division round rematch against the Bucs. You had a crazy stat.
Yeah, so I was doing my research, and I definitely, it's kind of rare for teams to have these early playoff rematches, to start the season. So obviously the Rams week 1, you come back with Tampa Bay. It's only been, 3 other teams in NFL history that have ran it back from the previous 2 playoff rematches, and all 3 of those teams reached the Super Bowl. Oh. So you look at 2007, the Patriots, they lost in the Super Bowl, but before that, the 1984 49ers, they won the Super Bowl, and the 1966 Packers, they won the Super Bowl. So this is rare territory, for them to come back and run it back. So, I know it's been Super Bowl, and Dan Campbell and the players trying to get away from it. But it's just been so much
Super Bowl
those type of stats. It's hard to overlook stuff like that when we're looking into that. So, that's kind of rare.
And it was a big win week 1. Obviously overtime, tough opponent. That's a team I think that you're going to see it when it's all said and done, the NFC fighting for a playoff spot, and that's critical when it comes to tiebreakers and matchups. You get another one this week. Let's get into 3 big keys about this week's matchup. First, to me, I thought Baker Mayfield and that offense looked terrific. Definitely. That passing game was great. Baker, I think, was 24 of 30, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 140.3 passer rating. And it's a first-year new offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen there. Just what did you see from that performance, and what does Detroit have to do to try to limit that kind of explosiveness?
So, funny story. Baker, I picked him up late on my fantasy team, so I was watching that relatively closely what he was doing. I got a lot of points off that, so shout out to Baker for first week letting me get that win. But so I thought it was cool. He got a lot of different targets over there. Mm-hmm. That's a high-power offense over there. You look at what Rachaad White was able to do, 75 receiving yards. Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, Mike Evans, all those guys were able to, really, really shine in that first game. So I think the Lions, they really have to be disciplined. They need smart play from Carlton Davis. I know, Carlton Davis got experience over there.
He's going to know those guys.
6 seasons, he know those guys. So I think that's somewhat of an advantage, having 6 years under his belt to play with them. And then we need Terrion Arnold, those guys to step up, be a little more disciplined. I thought he was up and down in that first week, but I think a little more consistent play from him. Also, you look at the safeties, Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, I think they're going to play a big role in this game. So I think they need guys to be more consistent, a little more disciplined. And I think from there on, just cleaning up a little bit of that play. That was really the offseason. What they really wanted to clean up was that secondary. So, stronger play from those guys. It's going to be a big challenge.
And that was week 1, right? We always see sloppier play, a little bit more inconsistent play with week 1, especially when you couple the fact that those guys hadn't played a lot of time in training camp. Yeah. Those guys were injured at different points and didn't get a whole lot of time. And now you're dealing with the environment there and the turned-up Lions fans and the noise and communication. So I would expect that to be much better. You look at that performance, and obviously Matthew threw for over 300 yards, had a lot of success. But when you look at Davis and Arnold specifically, they targeted Davis 13 times, completed 9 for 114 yards. But 63 of those was a short catch and run that he slipped on. Right. The 9-yard touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp, another play he slipped on. Terrion Arnold threw him 10 times, completed 8. One of those was a really nice route by Cooper Kupp, a 21-yard comeback that kind of turned Arnold around a little bit. Really good route. But other than that, 7 catches for 36 yards. I think when it's all said and done, the Lions will take that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And
especially against that team. Yeah, you got to. Yeah.
But this matchup's a little bit different. Those guys, especially Mike Evans on the outside, it's a different. Cooper Kupp is kind of that precision guy, that route runner, that guy's always in the right spot. Mike Evans is a guy, I thought Baker Mayfield said it best this week. He said, if it's 50-50, it's not really 50-50. I like Mr. Evans on that one, and he's right. I mean, that is such a weapon, right?
Yeah, definitely a big weapon. And like you said, you got to have guys to be disciplined. I think they were a little rusty, though, in that first game, just going back to your point. And I asked a couple of guys that after the first game for the Lions. I think you have to factor that in. No preseason experience, like you say, injuries. So I think, like you say, it has to be cleaned up a little more, right? I mean, definitely when you get that time off, I don't think they're going to, like Dan Campbell was saying, not use them for the preseason again going forward. That's not like a excuse, I don't think, but you have to factor that aspect in as well. And you're throwing them right in the deep end, especially these guys that's young, that's
against
new to the
veteran quarterback like that who's seen it all.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I expect it to be better all the way around both sides of the ball, week 2. And I think one big part getting into our second keys for that is how do they get Amon-Ra St. Brown more involved?
Man, I can imagine. Anybody who's been around this guy, I know he was extremely pissed. His dad, I talked to his dad the other day. He said he better not be over there getting complacent because they got the ads around the city. He got the Little Caesars commercials. So I don't think his family's tolerating that. I don't think he's tolerating that. The guy, 6 targets, 3 receptions, 13 yards. That's not going to happen again.
No.
I mean, that's just not. It's typical. And I think this defense is tailored for him to get off. I mean, you look at what he was able to do last year when they played them in the playoffs. He had a touchdown. The game before that, they saw them week 6, 12 receptions, tied for the second most at the time, in his career. So I think this is a game to kind of get him back on track. And I think, they were trying to get him involved. I think it was just a mix of, them with the coverage, and I think it was just a mix of just things falling apart a little bit. Jared Goff said after the game, he was like, he didn't feel like they were doing anything in particular to, take him out of it. But I think, he's a focal point now. Obviously, it was a big game, and I think it was just a quiet night. J-Mo got off. There's so many different weapons. So I don't think anybody expected him to have that type of game again. And I think you look at the success that he had last year against this Buccaneers team, I don't really see him really falling off at all. If anything, he's probably pissed off this week.
And one of the big storylines this week coming out of Tampa Bay is the issues that they're having at cornerback and safety, some of the injuries they have there. Bryce Hall going to IR. Zion McCollum had a concussion left of the game. Josh Hayes, their number 1 backup, has an ankle injury. And then Antoine Winfield was in a boot after that game. So, I mean, that's the chunk of your secondary. They've had to sign, an undrafted guy this week, and that's very much in flux. And I think that's advantage Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff, this passing attack at home. I would expect we see a much bigger performance from St. Brown this week.
Yeah, I think so, man. That guy's, one of the most disciplined, motivated guys, and any little thing he's looking at. So I know he's licking his chops to try to get back out there this week.
You got St. Brown on your fantasy team?
No, you
can't
not
start
this
on
year.
this week.
No, I have Baker though. So
all right,
no, I don't got on this year.
All right, let's get into our third big key, and one that I think we're both excited to see is what kind of impact can DJ Reader have? Because if you watch that Rams game, you have to be excited about the way that front minus DJ Reader got after Matthew Stafford. Not a ton of sacks too, but they hit him 12 times. He was on the run a little bit. He was pressured all game, and now you add a guy like DJ Reader into the mix, you're smiling, I'm smiling. I know Dan Campbell's smiling downstairs. What do you expect from him?
Man, I think he's going to come in. I don't think it's no pressure on him. I think he's going to come in and find his way, really help their interior defense out a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I talked to him before the season started as he was trying to get in the loop of everything, and he was saying, he doesn't feel there's any pressure. He just want to come in, be an impact player. He's not relied upon to get crazy amount of stats or anything like that. He's just going to come in and be consistent, veteran presence. You got Levi, you got Liam McNeil, and I think they're super excited to play with this veteran. He's been a part of a turnaround as well already before coming from, the Bengals team, and I think that type of stuff like that is invaluable. So I think he brings that as well as his production. So I expect him to really help that interior defense.
And you mentioned Levi, and I thought he had a terrific week 1 game, but now when you put DJ into that mix, and Marcus Davenport I thought had a great game, now there's not only talent, but there's depth along that defensive front. And that's important when you talk about 17 games, an 18-week schedule. You're going to need those guys, and now they can run guys in and out. They can keep guys fresh. That hasn't always been the case here. You've had some studs, obviously, on this defensive line, but now you got 5-6 guys that can go out there, make plays for you, and compete. You can shuffle those guys in, keep them fresh. I think that's huge. And just from a rushing perspective, you look at Tampa Bay, 30 rushes, 112 yards, 3.7 average. Not bad. Okay. Now you're putting a Lee McNeil and DJ Reader, the two top 10 run stuffers in the league next to each other. I just want to see how that works together. Just all that beef right there. I mean, that's bringing the beef.
Yeah, McNeil. I mean, he was saying they want to be violent. That's what these defense want to be known as. So you add him into that, this defense is violent, it's mean, it's angry, and I think you adding a guy like DJ Reader only makes it even better.
And I think it's going to allow guys like Alex Anzalone to fly around. You saw him 13 tackles, 3 tackles for loss last week. Just everything is going to, I think, open up for the guys behind them. It's going to be a much faster pace. I think more playmaking with that Detroit defense with him in the center there, because he's going to take double teams, and so is Hutch. And so now you get Marcus Davenport one-on-one, you get a Lee McNeil one-on-one. Just as an offensive line, what do you do? How do you attack it? And I think that's the fun thing if you're a Detroit Lions fan.
Yeah, definitely, man. This team is revamped, especially defensively in that area particularly. We talked about secondary earlier. So once they all put it together, get time to play, shake the rust, we haven't even saw, I feel like, as long as they stay healthy, the best of this team at all. I mean, that was just the little, really small window that we saw this first week. So it's a lot of excitement with that defense.
You're exciting Lions fans here, I know, because it's a great atmosphere. Week 1, it's going to be a great atmosphere here, a tough opponent. If you can come away, I think, with 2 wins off 2 playoff caliber teams, have those tiebreakers, I think that's huge for this team. Those were the 3 keys to Sunday's game. He is Eric Woodyard, does a great job with ESPN. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to the 20 in the Huddle podcast. Very happy to welcome Frank Ragnow, all-pro center for the Detroit Lions, brand new father. I saw that piece on ABC. How fun was that to be a part of, and just how has fatherhood changed you a little bit, Frank?
Yeah, it was really cool. I think the coolest part to me was to be able to highlight my wife, because she's incredible and does a lot for our family, and I'm extremely blessed. But it's been it's amazing. It's such a huge change of my perspective on everything in life. I feel like it's calmed me. I really realize what matters. Football is just football to me now, and I just feel like it's made me a better person and father or husband, everything. He's just been such a blessing.
And I saw him at training camp a couple times. How old is he now? He's
just turned 13 months.
Just 13 months. So he's starting to be on the move now and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's a tough time. I'll age myself here, Frank. You know how crazy it is? And my advice to you is take in every day. Mine turned 17 this week. That is crazy,
it flies
man.
By. It feels like it's flying
13
by.
months has flown by, haven't it?
Yeah.
How cool is it to be in a room there, too? And that piece highlighted on ABC, if you haven't seen it, it's a great one. It gets all 5 of you guys who are now dads together. But just to have that community within that offensive line group, and just have guys that are in similar spots, wives that are in similar spots. I think you guys highlighted that, too. It feels like family in that room. It always has been, but especially now, doesn't it?
For sure. It's a blessing to be able to lean on these guys, ask the advice of Panay, Graham, Taylor, Kevin, like to hear what they have to say. And they've already been through it, and then we all are going through a lot of the same things, so we're able to relate and have a good conversation about it all.
All right, let's get to football. How rewarding was that overtime drive for you? I mean, you guys pride yourself on playing big boy ball at offensive line here. You have for years, but that was the true definition of it right there. I mean, 6 rushes, 60 yards, went right down the field, threw it one time for 10 yards, but that was big boy ball. How impressive was that?
Yeah, it felt good. Would have liked to get that going a little bit earlier in the game, but we were able to make it happen. You definitely felt like David was hit a different level there, and it was pretty special to be a part of that. I feel like the whole offense kind of fueled off him as he kept going, and then we just tried to execute and do our job and do what we needed to do.
How much do you guys appreciate having a running back like that back? I mean, they talk all the time about the kind of thunder and lightning, but David really can be that thunder. But there's a little lightning in there,
for
too.
Sure.
He's kind of that mixed guy, but when he gets going, man, he is really tough to tackle. But guys bounce off him, and he's just a guy that can run between the tackles, make big plays. How nice is it to have a guy like that running behind you?
Yeah, he's relentless, and to know that he's one cut away or running over one guy away from making a big one, it definitely motivates you more to finish your block a little bit harder for a few more seconds and see what happens, and he showed it.
You guys going to get that going first quarter this week? We're going to not have to wait
till
till overtime?
That's the goal.
You know, and I wrote after the game that the good teams in this league find a way to win when they don't play their best football. Is that one of the takeaways that you can take from last week? And especially offensively, I don't think we've seen this offense be explosive, one of the best in the league. You weren't quite there last week, especially in the passing game, but week one's kind of the unknown. Is that the one takeaway there, that, hey, we're a good football team, we still find a way to win even though we don't play our best football? That's
the good takeaway. That's what you have to take away from it. You also have to be hard on yourself, your harshest critics, and see where we went wrong and fix all that stuff and not forget about that in a win. But yeah, the good takeaway is good teams find a way to win ugly, and I feel like we did play some complementary football with offense, defense, and special teams, so that's a good sign.
What was the biggest disappointment for you after watching the tape Monday? What's one area you'd like to see this offense maybe clean up, especially heading into a Bucs game on Sunday?
I'd just say operation, we could definitely be cleaner, whether it's false starts or whatnot, and how we're the tempo in and out of the huddle and all that stuff. Like, that really can stress out a defense if you're really on your P's and Q's there.
What about Kevin Zeitler? You got your first chance kind of playing, next to him. How has he worked into that mix? Obviously an experienced player, played for a terrific team in Baltimore. How has he fit into that mix? How do you like that setup there along the right side with you, him, and obviously Panay?
Yeah, he's a strong guard and does a great job moving double teams. Him and Panay had a couple of them this week that were pretty good.
Talk about this challenge this week with the Bucs. I mean, that's a defense that is going to come. They're going to pressure you a lot of different ways. I think they run pretty much every single defense in the book when you look through the course of a game. Just how difficult the task this week. What's the main focus heading into Sunday?
Yeah, Coach Bowles is going to really stress you out. I think they can run any coverage, any pressure, a whole lot of fronts, and then you combine that with a lot of talent up front and a lot of guys who've been in that system for a while. So we're going to have our hands full. They do a great job stopping the run. They've always done a great job under him, and then they'll bring a whole boatload of different pressures, whether it's cover zero pressures or linebacker dogs, free safety. They're bringing it all. So you got to really be on your P's and Q's. We got to make sure we're overly communicating and trying to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, you talked about some of the dogs. The Vita Vea is one of them. And I see do you take that approach sometimes when you got a guy like that who's just going to be on you all game long, who's a giant human being? Like Saturday before the game, you're obviously excited about it. You're like, oh, that's going to be such a headache all day.
Freaking grizzly bear. Yeah, it's going to be I know I'm going to have my hands full. Extremely large, extremely strong, extremely athletic, very talented player, so got to bring in every snap.
You look forward to matchups like that too? I know we've talked in the past, like before you were playing the Rams and getting like an Aaron Donald type. When you get those elite type players, do you look forward to those matchups too?
Part of it, yeah. Like there's some parts you're like, oh, not looking forward to that. But like to be able to compete against the best is only going to bring out your best, I feel like.
Does he rank up there? Like, do you have like a top three like currently playing? I know Aaron Donald retired, so he's probably off that list.
But is
there like a
current
like list of the top three guys that you're like, ugh?
Like true noses.
Yeah.
Him and Dexter are right up there.
Yeah.
Those two are like true nose guards. Those are the best.
And you just know every play they're going to be right across from you. You've got to do your job.
Here we go.
Here we go. I love it. Here we go again at Ford Field. What a great atmosphere that was. Obviously all playoffs last year, but week one as well. You expect the same thing. How much, Frank, is that becoming a home field advantage for you and one of the best ones in the league?
Yeah, I don't think people realize how special it is and how hard it is as an offense to operate on the road when your crowd is absurd. Like, for me as a center going on the road, when you can't hear yourself, the communication and everything is so much harder, and that really will frazzle an offense. So the louder we can be, and we are so loud, it is a huge advantage for us on defense.
Well, it's going to be a crazy environment. I think the Tigers are going on next door. Obviously, it's going to be crazy in there. You get another NFC playoff, rematch, an important game in the NFC because at the end, those tiebreakers and things like that are going to matter. It should be a fun one. What's the vibe in the locker room going into this one? What's the feeling?
I think we're excited. We know we're going to have our hands full. We know there's a very talented team on offense and defense, and it's going to be a great test for us.
Well, it should be a really fun game. He is Frank Ragnow, all-pro center, one of the best in the business. Thanks for joining the Twentyman Huddle podcast. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Welcome back to the 20 the Huddle podcast, and I'm very happy to welcome Scott Smith, the senior writer, editor over at Buccaneers.com. He does a great job covering everything Bucs. And Scott, I feel like a little bit of deja vu. I had Jordan Rodriguez from the Rams here last week, and now I've got you. It's like a playoff do-over here to start the regular season.
Yeah, and we talked last year, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. Didn't enjoy the outcome of the games all that much, although that playoff game up in Detroit was a pretty good game. It was tied going into the fourth quarter, so disappointed in how it ended, but we certainly felt like we played well.
Well, I have to just start. Obviously, a big win for the Bucs week 1. Really took care of business against Washington. But are you being signed to play cornerback for the Buccaneers this Sunday? Because boy, that was really an issue coming out of that game. Where do you guys stand in terms of the cornerback position and your health in the secondary?
Well, we haven't got our injury report for the day yet, so there's nothing official. But Coach did tell us that Zion McCollum, who was the starter opposite Jamel Dean, and then suffered a concussion, he did practice in a limited fashion today. Coach Bowles says he needs to see a lot more before the week is done, and obviously he has to clear the concussion protocol. But there's a chance he'll be back. We had to put Bryce Hall on injured reserve. He's the guy who came in for Zion McCollum because he hurt his ankle. And then the next man in would have been Josh Hayes, his second-year player we drafted last year, but he hurt his ankle on a special teams play. So we were down to no corner. We only had 4 active corners that day. And so one of our second-year safety who played slot corner last year came in to play outside corner, a position he hadn't taken a snap at since he was a sophomore in high school, Christian Isian. And he actually did a really good job. However, he's probably not going to play there this week because Antoine Winfield Jr. is probably not going to play due to a foot injury, and they want to play Christian Isian at safety now, at free safety. So that's probably how it'll shake out. We'll see how some of these injuries go. We also have an undrafted rookie they like named Tyreek Funderburk, and we re-signed a guy who was on our practice squad last year named Keaton Isaac. So we have options there. It's the same thing the coaches always say, next man up. So we'll see how it goes.
No, there's a lot of moving parts, obviously, there with the secondary going into an important game because, this is obviously 2 teams that faced each other in the playoffs last year, faced each other in the regular season. That Week 6 game was, important for seeding and stuff like that. You don't know where that's going to end up, at the end of the year here with 2 teams that are expected to be in the mix in the playoffs. But, Scott, what was your impression of the win last week against Washington? What was your biggest takeaway from that matchup and that win?
Well, I think it's how efficient and productive the offense was right out of the gate. As you know, shorter preseasons and more teams like we are not playing their starters a lot in the preseason. Ours only got 1 drive. And so it would have not been surprising for both teams to kind of come out and be a little bit rusty on offense. But the Bucs scored on their first 5 drives, then punted once, and then scored 3 more times before a kneel down. So 7 scores in 8 possessions is pretty darn good. And it was really sort of a nice test run for Liam Cohen and his new offense. And there was a lot to like about it. There was a lot to like about a running game that looks a little bit better and now has 2 contributors in Rashad White and Bucky Irving. And just, I think the key to me was we were 9 of 13 on third downs. And what Liam Cohen said a lot during press conferences leading up to the season was he wants this offense, and Baker in particular, to have answers. So when they go out there and maybe they were thinking they were going to see zone and then it looks like man, they have answers for that, or vice versa. And they have a lot of variety of run plays. And I think the answers showed up on third downs. 9 of 13 was the best any team did this weekend.
Yeah, they were really good on third down. And really, the passing game in general was really good. Baker Mayfield was efficient. Obviously, Mike Evans is Mike Evans, 10 straight years with 1,000 receiving yards. He's always an issue. I think that'll be one of the real interesting matchups in this one come Sunday is that passing attack, those weapons on the outside against really a very new-look Detroit secondary led by a guy that you guys are pretty familiar with over there, Carlton Davis III. Just we saw week 1 what he can do, a veteran guy, but what did he show you over, 6 years in Tampa Bay? What kind of player is Detroit getting, and how much can maybe that help maybe both sides? Because those are going to be 2 guys very familiar with each other. Mike Evans is going to be familiar with Carlton, vice versa, and how might that dynamic work Sunday as well?
Yeah, I think that last point is a good one, and it will be interesting to see who that gives the advantage to, offensive player or defender. I don't know yet, but Carlton really had a nice, I think, 6 years here when he was fully healthy and when he was playing at his peak. He I think he was a very underrated corner for many of those years. For some stretch, he had a whole lot of pass breakups. I think he led the league over a course of 2-season span at one point, and he was the only guy that we really had in recent years that there were certain games where you would take him and have him shadow one specific receiver. And he did that really well on a couple occasions. So you guys obviously got a very good player, and you saw that in week one. The familiarity factor is going to be interesting, though.
And it'll be interesting, too, those veteran receivers. Now, on the other side is Terrion Arnold, a rookie who's only played one game, looked pretty good against the Rams, but he'll obviously be tested. That should be one of the fun matchups. Yeah, I heard the Baker Mayfield talk, and when the schedule came out, that this was maybe one of those games that some of those guys had circled when the schedule comes out, just because of the way, obviously, last year ended in Detroit in a playoff loss, and now you get to go back there so early this week. Is that one that guys have been looking forward to once the schedule came out? Maybe a little bit of a chance of redemption in Detroit?
Absolutely, definitely, 100%. And just today, Baker Mayfield said, I think another big part of this is that the Buccaneers considered playing the Lions a great measuring stick. So you said it earlier, it's early in the season. We don't know how this outcome will affect playoff seedings or who wins divisions and so on. But no matter who wins the game, if the Buccaneers feel like they're on an equal footing with the Lions this weekend, especially up there in that raucous environment, they will consider that a good measuring stick. And that's, I guess I would put it this way. There aren't high national expectations for the Bucs yet again this year, despite 3 straight division titles and us pretty much keeping everybody we had last year. There's a lot more, obviously, expectations internally, but beating Washington in the first week after they, pretty much struggled last year and have a rookie quarterback isn't something that gave the national media a whole lot of reason to move us up a power ranking or whatever. Now, if the Buccaneers look like they're on equal footing with the Lions, especially in Detroit, that could change some people's minds.
Well, I can tell you this: Dan Campbell and everybody at the Meyer Performance Center isn't overlooking the Bucs. They know that's a darn good football team. It took everything that they needed to do to beat that team in the division playoffs. Obviously, it came down to the last minute, the last drive there. So, they're certainly not being overlooked here, especially if you look at the way Baker Mayfield and that offense played last week. I think Detroit's defense has their work cut out for them. But Scott, maybe one or two keys for you and for the Bucs in this matchup in Detroit, one or two things they really have to do well to walk out of Detroit with a victory.
Well, I'll start with the obvious cliche one, but I think it's particularly true here. In the 2 losses to Detroit last year, I believe the combined turnover margin was 3-0 in your favor. And it's hard, really, really hard on the road, especially in that environment in Ford Field, especially if you do it early and allow that whole building and the team to gain some early momentum. And by turning the ball over early, you really have to avoid that. It is really hard to win on the road when you turn the ball over. So we didn't have any takeaways. We didn't have any turnovers in our first game. I think that could swing it a little bit. And I think you've talked about it a lot here, but how well will Baker and our great offensive pass catching weapons fare against this new looking Detroit secondary? Because, Baker threw the ball to our top 3 targets pretty much, obviously, are Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and the running back Rachaad White. He threw 20 passes in their direction in that game and completed 19 of them. That's an unbelievable efficiency rate. The only one that wasn't complete was a scrambling overthrow in the end zone to Mike Evans. So if they can do that kind of efficiency and can get guys open in that secondary, that would, because this could end up being a shootout with all of the injured players we have on defense. We also have some injury problems up front on the defensive line. So injuries at the front and the back is going to make it even harder to stop that great Detroit defense. So I think the Buccaneers have to be able to score to keep up, and how Baker and his targets do against those new guys in the secondary is probably the key.
I know you've been around Mike Evans for a long time. You know him well. Did he even marvel you? Because from the outside looking in, you look at 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons. You just look at the consistency with him, the size and the speed, the ability to catch 50-50 balls. I love the comment that Baker made, I think it was earlier today, that that's not really a 50-50 ball when it's up to Mike Evans. I think that's advantage Mr. Evans, he said. But do you marvel at that guy's just consistent talent week in, week out, year in, year out?
I guess we've come to expect it now, but it is pretty amazing. And 2 touchdowns in his first game. He looks just the same. Last year, he looked like he was in 2017 form. He looks just as good now. I don't know did you happen to see Kyle Brandt's piece on him today?
I didn't know.
he had teased that he had a hot take on Twitter. He had teased that he had a hot take about Mike, but then he didn't share it for like a day. And today he came out and he said, Mike Evans is the greatest player in Buccaneers history. Now, he did acknowledge that he meant the word greatest, not necessarily best, because we have 5 guys in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
They're all on the defensive side. But Kyle's argument was he's been so consistent for so long, and he's a great guy in the locker room. He's a team leader. He's just a great dude, first of all. And to have all those together, in Kyle's opinion, makes him the greatest Buccaneer ever. I'd probably have to do a little thinking to see if I agree or not, but he's definitely up there. And you said it yourself. He's just so consistent year after year, game after game. He's never played fewer than 13 games in a season. As you know, he's at 96 touchdowns now, which is 12th all time. And he's 4 away from becoming the 11th player in NFL history to get 100 touchdown catches. He's been a joy to be around for more than a decade now, and he's still going strong.
Well, the Lions will certainly have their hands full with him, and he's obviously been a guy that has been around the Lions, know him very well. But maybe who's a guy who's maybe new to this year, or maybe has an increased role? Maybe it wasn't a big part of that Week 6 game, wasn't a big part of the division game, but maybe who could be a factor Sunday afternoon here in Detroit for the Bucs?
Yeah, I'll go with our rookie center, Graham Barton, who we drafted him out of Duke. He primarily played tackle at Duke, but the plan all along was to move him to center, and he did win a competition for that job. And in the preseason and then in this first game, he has really graded out very highly with the coaches. He's a guy that's very athletic. You could see on tape him and our right guard, Cody Mauch. They have good speed for that position. I mean, you guys have Penei Sewell, so you know what I'm talking about. He can get all over the field. He can get downfield 20, 30 yards on the screen. And he's just moving guys at the line of scrimmage. And our run game last year was not very good. It was a little better at the end of the season. I don't remember how we did in the playoff game, but up there. But that was a huge point of emphasis, and we needed to get better in the interior line because the tackles played pretty well. So we got a new center in Graham Barton. We got Ben Bredesen, and he's played very well from the Giants. And then our second-year guy, Cody Mauch, a second-round pick a year ago, really put on a lot of strength and size in the offseason because that was really his main deficiency as a rookie. He's very good technically and very athletic, but he just was having a little trouble with some of the bigger, more powerful guys. So you've got those guys now actually moving guys and creating lanes and cutback lanes for our running backs. And the running game has looked completely revitalized so far. And that could be a major difference between this team now and the last time you guys saw it.
Yeah, Graham Barton was a guy that I loved in the draft. I was kind of hoping he would fall to Detroit. It worked out with them getting, obviously, Terry and Arnold, but he's a guy that I really love. Fits what they do. When you talk about the run game, I can see that, having watched his tape at Duke and the way that he can move people. I can see how that's an instant upgrade. Well, you guys played in Detroit in the playoffs, obviously, last year. You know the atmosphere. You can expect a similar thing. If it's anything like last week, those people in that stadium were turned up, and it's going to be loud. Do anything different to prepare for that, or does it help that you were just there, at the end of last year and probably its most frenzy environment? Does it help that they know what they're in for?
Yeah, I think so, and I feel like they felt like they handled that pretty well, and really a lot of our guys after that game and this week before this game have talked about how much they really enjoyed playing in that atmosphere. It gets them pumped up too, but it is obviously a challenge, and if you saw us on our practice field, like any team that's coming up to play there, you're practicing the things you do in order to be able to communicate. That doesn't mean it'll be easy, but they do feel like they did a pretty good job of communicating last year. And so that probably gives them confidence that going into this game, that they can do it again.
Well, it should be a really fun atmosphere, Scott. It's 2 really good teams that I think are going to be right there in the end in the playoff picture in the NFC. So it's a big week 2 matchup. You got to love those in the NFL. It's fun. You, sir, have a safe trip up here. I will make sure I come and say hello. And thank you, as always. Always great stuff from you from a Bucs perspective. I appreciate you taking the time. Scott Smith, senior writer and editor for Buccaneers.com.
Thanks a lot, Tim. I really enjoyed it.
Welcome back to the 20-Minute Huddle podcast, and I am very excited, you guys and gals out there, because I have absolutely one of the best in the business, Stacey Dales, who just got promoted to senior national reporter, very well deserved. Stacey has her hand on everything in the NFL. She's got a pulse on everything. Great information here. We're going to get into Lions. We're going to get into the NFC North a little bit. Stacey, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the Twentyman Huddle podcast. How you been?
Hey, what's up, Tim? Thanks for the intro. That was super cool. I've been good. I've been ready for football for so long, and we had an interesting week 1, and here we're on to week 2. And fortunately, I am headed to Detroit because I get the Bucs and Lions in week 2. Can't wait.
Oh, that's perfect. We usually talk, obviously before the season, we give kind of a preview of the NFC North. But I love the fact that we get to talk after week 1 because now some stuff has happened here. We've got kind of an idea of who these teams are starting to be. Well, let's start in Detroit since you are doing Detroit and Tampa. Obviously, a great week 1 win over a team I think we both expect to be right in the mix in the playoff picture in the NFC in the Rams. What was your biggest takeaway from that week 1 win for Detroit?
I think my biggest takeaway was the overtime drive, right? I mean, it was impressive, going back and looking at, first of all, it was just such an exciting atmosphere. Matthew Stafford threw the ball a gazillion times, as you know, Tim, but I found the resolve of the Lions to show up like, let's carry this thing over from the NFC Championship and show why we were in that game and why we're, trying to play for a Super Bowl this season once again. First overtime victory since 2016 for the Detroit Lions. So when you can finish a game in that fashion and on the ground, by the way, with that drive, it was an 8-play, 70-yard touchdown drive to win it. Just the resolve, the conviction in the play calling, right? And to see Demo score at the end of that drive and just close out the deal at home. To me, that's the mark of a tried and tested football team, and it's only week 1. So I think that bodes well.
No, that's a good line. And I think how I wrote it or how I described it after the game is good football teams in this league win games when they don't play their best football. And that's, I think, one takeaway from Detroit is they didn't play their best football, but they still found a way. You talked about that drive. And look, Amon-Ra St. 3 catches, 13 yards, and you still produce enough points to win a game like that. So, other guys step up, Jamison Williams and, obviously Demo, who you talked about. I think we both can expect this offense to be pretty good. We expect St. Brown to get rolling and this passing game to get rolling a little bit. But to me, it's always been how far this Lions team will go is how far this kind of revamped, new look defense can take them. Do you agree?
I do. I felt like, I have just notorious flashbacks of the second half against the San Francisco 49ers in that game, a game that I was at. And it was just sitting in the press box and watching that thing unfold and watching Brock Purdy just go off, not to bring it back because the past is the past and history is history. But there's a reason that the Detroit Lions retooled that defense in the fashion that they did. I can't wait to see the growth of Terrion Arnold and, Ennis Rakestraw. And I obviously love the addition of Carlton Davis, who hopefully will give a few nuggets to his team on his former team, the Tampa Bay Bucks, this week. But I'm just so anxious to see what, like, Brad Holmes is one of the best GMs in the business and has put together this roster over the last few seasons. And I'm just really fascinated to see where this defense can go. Kirby Joseph, does he have Matthew Stafford's number or what?
I think it might. Well, the little quarrel between them last week. Obviously, when he had the hit, that took out what was the tight end's name? Higbee.
Yep.
Higbee took him out, obviously, and he had the hit on TJ Hawkins. And so, him and Stafford get after him. I thought about that incident right away when Matthew threw that interception to Kirby. Like, oh, that had to feel so great for Kirby.
Yeah, well, we had him on in the offseason on some of our programming on NFL Network, and he has no shame in anything. He is that guy has conviction. But that's kind of the roster they've built, and that's where Terrion Arnold, a guy like that, comes in and adds that attitude. But you're right, Tim. If this defense can take a step this season, the offense is all there. I'm okay with Amon-Ra's performance, actually. I mean, you want more out of him because he's an all-pro type receiver. But, see Jamison Williams kind of take off and have the performance that he did, a career high. If he can do that, Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to find more opportunities. I mean, as you know, he is the number one, sort of chess piece that the opposing defenses are trying to take away outside of the run game. You're pleased if you ran the ball the way you did. I think, if you listen to Todd Bowles, like he acknowledged this week when he talked about the Lions, they can beat you in every way. And I think the Bucs are also a team that can do that. This is going to be a slugfest, I think, on Sunday between these two football teams, right, Tim? Like,
I think so.
Baker Mayfield, to me, was the highest performing quarterback in week one of all the QBs with his, 4 touchdown performance. And you see a healthy Chris Godwin opposite Mike Evans. This offense can be very explosive, but mostly they were efficient and the offensive line did a good job. So this will be a fun game on Sunday.
Yeah, one addition to that Detroit defense, too, that'll be big this week, Stace, is DJ Reader. Big free agent acquisition, yeah. And I just talked to him in the locker room on Wednesday, and he's excited about kind of making his Lions debut. You get Hutch, Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader, and we'll see if Marcus Davenport, he played really well there, too. So it should be fun, and I agree that it could be a slug out, too, especially when you think about all the injuries that Tampa's dealing with in their secondary. I think me and you might have a chance to play corner for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday. They're so down on guys, so I could see this being high scoring, a kind of a shootout and really fun. All right, let's flip over to Chicago a little bit. Now, you live in Chicago. You are very familiar with the Chicago Bears. Is this basically just kind of you love to see them win a football game, right? With special teams and defense, but how concerned are you with the way Caleb Williams played? I think we all maybe were a little spoiled last year with how C.J. Stroud came in, and we think maybe that's something that you should do, but that's a very rare case. Guys struggle. It takes some time. How concerned are they in Chicago about the way Caleb Williams and that offense played, or are they just happy that they it was a full team effort to get that win?
Yeah, well, I was at the game. That was my first game this season, Chicago, Tennessee. And you're right. The offense just was paltry at best on Sunday, but that's what you expect from a rookie quarterback. If I recall, and going back in our research notes, CJ Stroud's first game with the Houston Texans wasn't great statistically, but his second week was much better. So like Bobby Slowick and him are going into year 2. And ironically, they face the Bears in week 2, the Houston Texans. So that'll be fun to watch how they adjust. I just think for Caleb Williams, we knew and we know the Bears defense is going to be really good, right? Their secondary is elite, absolutely elite. To see what Tyreek Stevenson and Jalen Johnson did against Tennessee, and then the turnovers, the takeaways, I think you clearly see why Matt Eberflus is one of the best defensive play callers in the National Football League. When you get a pressure in the, I think it was the fourth quarter. Yeah. And you get a pressure from DeMarcus Walker that leads to a pick 6 by Tyreek Stevenson off of a brilliant play call. That should excite Bears fans, but it's going to take time. I just think we expect like immediate results now from these rookies. Can you imagine? And Tim, I don't profess to know what it's like to have 4 250 plus to 350 or 300 pound defensive linemen coming at me in a pocket as a rookie quarterback in the NFL. I mean, it's hard for veteran quarterbacks at times. I just think you got to be patient, but I also think that like Chicago needs to find a run game. I think that, rookie quarterbacks need to take the check down. Like when I go back and watch Monday Night Football and Brock Purdy is a great processor of the game. We saw that in his rookie campaign last year, but he just makes the easy throw. You see Jared Goff make the easy throw. You'll see Baker do the same thing. I just think, make the easy throw, get the tight ends involved. I don't think Cole Kmet was involved enough on Sunday in the pass game, maybe pass pro, because their offensive line struggled with some of the looks that Denard Wilson threw at the rookie quarterback. But he's going to see a whole lot more of those looks here to come. So patience is really a virtue for young quarterbacks and offenses to start any NFL season. So defense is there, right? But I think it's going to take time for any offense, let alone a rookie quarterback-led offense.
No, I think it's a great point by you, because what's a quarterback's best friend, right? That slot receiver, right? That tight end over them, those short, easy throws, first read. It's not there, swinging out to a back. they've got a pretty good one there that can catch the football out of the backfield. And so I agree with you 100%. Just make the game easier for him. Make it simpler for him. I know you want to make the big plays, and he's got a big arm, and he can scramble and look down the field, but those are hard plays. Those are hard plays for veteran quarterbacks to make.
Yeah.
Make the easy ones, and then if you get that look or the play breaks down, use his natural athleticism, make a play, but don't make it be a big part of the offense. Simple, easy, get it out of his hands, then open it up for the big play. I think it's a great point by you.
Yeah, there's no question. And even like when I look at Monday Night Football with Aaron Rodgers, I just think Aaron Rodgers plays the quarterback position brilliantly. Like I always have. I've watched him do things that, like, there's no way he could have done that. Like, but he did, like, manufacture comebacks in his career the way he has. There's a reason he's a 4-time MVP. But like, did he use a tight end against the San Francisco 49ers? No. And I just think you become so vast. And Shane Waldron is a coach that we know historically has loved the use of tight ends. So I'll be interested to see how he incorporates them this week. But by and large, what a week 1 win for the NFC North. I mean, the Vikings to, dismantle the Giants, and then to see obviously Chicago win a game that last year they probably would have lost. Tim, I don't know if you agree, but like they closed out a game. Yeah. And then the Lions showed why they were the best team in the North last season against a really good Rams squad and a quarterback who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, like in Matthew Stafford. So I just think it was a successful weekend, and we'll have to see what happens to the Packers with Malik Willis at QB.
Yeah, you brought it up, and that was the next one I was going to get to. Is this in Green Bay? Is it just about surviving with Malik, Willis, not getting too far behind? We don't know how long Jordan Love is going to be out. 3 to 4 weeks, 3 to 5. You hear it'll depend, but is it just really they've got a good enough team over there to win and to compete in the NFC? And some have even said to be a Super Bowl favorite. But if you get too far behind, now you've got to play behind the chains. Is it literally for the next month? Is it just don't get too far behind without Jordan Love?
Yeah, I think when I think about Malik Willis, and we don't like long years ago, I had a sprained MCL from basketball, and like you have to let it heal.
Stacey's a heck of a basketball player, by the way.
A long time ago.
Hall of Fame,
I'm all
thank
broken.
you.
My pieces are all broken now, but you have to let it heal, and then you have to get confident again on it that you're not at a place of like mentally concern and overly cautious, I would say, especially for a quarterback in the NFL who, Jordan Love is a pocket passer. I mean, when I look at him, he's really learned how to climb the pocket really well. He had an incredible throw against the Eagles in Brazil that I can recall. I can't remember when it was in the game, but, he wants to throw from the pocket, and I just think he's going to have to get that confidence when he comes back. But for Malik Willis, who is he, right, Tim? We know he's a quarterback with a huge arm and, obviously played in Tennessee as a backup. He's incredibly athletic. And so I think Matt LaFleur is underrated in terms of putting the skill set of his quarterback in the operation to succeed. And I think that he will do that, get those legs going. But Josh Jacobs is going to be extremely important. And, without A.J. Dillon in the lineup due to injury, he's got to become the man. Like we've seen Aaron Jones be it. Obviously, he's now in Minnesota. But like I just think they're going to need to figure out ways to run the ball, get those legs going by Malik Willis. And again, another quarterback, because he'll have to learn very quickly, get the ball out of his hands quickly to that array of playmakers that the Packers have.
And there's a lot of them there.
There's so many.
How strange was it to see the 4-3 versus 3-4? Jeff Hafley, the new defensive coordinator. It's been how long, Stacey, that we've seen this kind of defense that you knew Green Bay was going to come with that 3-4, and now it just that 4-3 look is a little bit weird to me, but that's a good defensive unit that I think can help stem the loss of Jordan Love too. They've got some playmakers on that side of the ball, and I think that's going to be a big key part of it as well.
Yeah, it was kind of foreign watching them because they've been in the Joe Barry thing for so long, right? And with all that shell and underneath type stuff that they would just kind of, hey, we're going to give you that, but we're not going to give you the big play. And I'll vividly remember, the Jair Alexander, touch and go with AJ Brown, and Brown just blasts him off across the middle for a huge play. And, I think the players are getting used to it a little bit, having the freedom, a little bit more press, and like a little bit more one-on-one. And I think you're going to see maybe some of those playmakers kind of come alive for the Packers, like Jair Alexander. But as my dogs anoint the show,
I like, and the one perked up there behind you. He or the other one.
Yeah, my old sugarfish Ruby. My landscapers are outside, but it's going to be an interesting season, Tim, like with this division, because I think it's extremely competitive, and every team has some good quarterback play. I would sort of tip my cap to the Vikings and Sam Darnold, and what did he complete his first 12 or 14 balls against the Giants? Like, that is Kevin O'Connell. And so, Kirk Cousins really enjoyed some Kevin O'Connell in those play calls.
Will we find out if and I know everybody's going to say, well, it was the New York Giants. All right, come on, that doesn't count, right? And no offense to the New York Giants fans out there, but the team's struggling at the moment. They play San Francisco this week. Is this now, okay, Minnesota's for real? We'll know that after week 2.
Well, I liked their defense last year. I think Brian Flores is very aggressive. The players love to play in it. San Francisco is really damn good. Monday Night Football, I was beyond impressed. I mean, really? Trent Williams walks in like off the street because he was in his sort of holdout thing, whatever. Brandon Ayuk looked a little rusty to me, but I mean, Brock Purdy looks like a 10-year veteran. And for Christian McCaffrey to, and probably will sit out again this week, for him to not play, and Mason comes in and runs for almost 150 on the ground. Like, against a New York Jets defense is good.
They're just a machine. They're a machine offensively.
They are a machine. And I sit here on a Lions pod with you as we look at last year, the way it ended. Like, I mean, that's how good Detroit was last season, because it doesn't get a whole lot better than what Kyle Shanahan has done with those Niners.
Well, I know Lions fans here are wanting to see a rematch of that contest again. Hopefully here in Detroit, where maybe it's a little bit different outcome. But the NFC, I agree with you. The NFC North, I think, is very underrated across the league. It should be fun. There's some good teams there. Some teams that got to survive a little bit with some injury stuff. Detroit is still, in my opinion, the head of the class, but it's a lot closer than people think. It should be a fun division. Stacey, I really appreciate you taking the time. You are my go-to for anything NFC North. I appreciate you, and congratulations on the promotion. Very well deserved, and we will all be watching you all year long for sure.
Thank you for having me. Can't wait to see you. Get a big hug on Sunday at Ford Field, and I expect the decibels to blow my eardrums. I always make sure I pack my earplugs.
Your little ear protectors, you're going to need it.
I do, because it's an open press box. Everyone knows. But it's so loud in there. Like, you are deaf. It's like you leave a concert and your ears are ringing. That's what it's like at Ford Field. I expect nothing less at noon kickoff, or I guess 1 o'clock kickoff on Sunday.
Yeah, it'll be crazy down there too. The Tigers are at home this weekend too, so there'll be lots going on across the street. And there, Detroit will be fun. Stace, thanks so much for joining me. I will say hello on Sunday for sure. Enjoy the trip across the way here to Detroit. Safe travels, and we will see you Sunday. Thanks so much.
Thanks, my friend.